All right, next category is mental health, emotional regulation, and behavior. All right. What's one everyday thing parents do that unintentionally teaches kids to ignore their own feelings?
Actually dismissing it. Like, they get hurt. Oh, why are you crying? Stop crying. Or they're upset because somebody made the team and they didn't, or they didn't get the grade they wanted. And just stating it. Like, oh, why are you crying? Why are you upset? You don't need to cry. You should stop. And so then, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be crying. Maybe I shouldn't be mad and sad, whatever emotion. Because the person you love is telling you, you shouldn't be feeling that.
Well, and something subliminally, I think parents we try to present to our kids that we have it all together, but when's the last time your kid saw you cry? When's the last time your kid saw you say, I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm hurt, I'm upset? By modeling to them, it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to be imperfect, then you give them permission to do the same.
I think parents want to mean well by asking a lot of questions, but then they turn into like investigative mode, right? Yes. And the child begins to shut down because they're like, I'm being bombarded with all of these questions and I don't know the answers to them. Yeah. So instead of sharing and opening up, they begin to shut down because they don't know the answers to these questions that they're being asked.
Yes. Well, I think many times too, kids aren't really sharing their feelings because maybe that's what we modeled as well too, because we were not taught that it's okay to have feelings. We weren't taught that we should talk about hard things. Like that's what I was modeled. That's what was going on with me when I was growing up. And so, as an 80s kid, everything was just like, oh, you're fine. Everything's fine. We don't talk about stuff, So I think sometimes we can unconsciously reinforce things that we don't mean to reinforce. All right, next one. What's a behavior parents often call lazy that's actually a sign of executive dysfunction? I like this one.
So I'm going to jump in on that one because that was me, a messy room. I was the child who had the messy room, but it wasn't because I didn't want to be clean. I didn't know what to do. And I didn't know as an adult until later, but often parents will say, you're lazy because you're not cleaning up your room, you're not doing your chores, you're not doing that. But have they been taught?
Yeah.
Do they know what to do?
That was me too. I was very messy as a teenager, and then as I was a young adult. And for me, my mom was like, because she was extremely neat. And it was like, well, how hard is it? Well, obviously it's hard. And I talked to parents that executive functioning, like for cleaning a room, it's not just cleaning your room. You have to plan. You have to organize in your mind, in the space. You have to manage your time so it doesn't take all day. You have to have task initiation. You have to prioritize. You have to remember that you were cleaning because you might pick up something and remember, hey, I want to watch this movie now. And so there's so many executive functions that are in charge of the thing that prevents you from looking lazy.
When you can get to that point, do all the planning and be like, well, that's too much. Mm-hmm. And then you're tapping out.
Then you're overwhelmed and you stop.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and maybe even like, I know we say the word teach, but what does teach look like? Like sometimes we literally have to physically stand there with them and say, okay, let's put this here. And maybe we do it, in a rotation of a room. So let's start in this corner. In this corner, we do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. In this corner, we do this. Because teaching is something that we take for granted. Mm-hmm. Like for me, it's taken me 48 years to realize that teaching is not telling you how to do it. It's standing there with you and showing you this is how it needs to be done. And then also, especially when you're doing it with teenagers, being willing to be flexible, right? Because they're going to want to rearrange their room. They're going to want to put things, and you have to think, how important is it? If they want to put this on the left and the right, if they want to put it in the closet instead of the drawer, like, is it really worth this argument?
And I think we're dealing with executive function struggles, right? So they don't have the attention, they don't have, they're not in it for the long haul. And so I think as parents, we want this, that we expect them to know these things when they reach a certain age, and it doesn't work that way. And so a lot of times, what is clean to them is not clean to us.
Right.
We've got a two different idea of what cleaning looks like. And so I think we have to work with our kids, especially teenagers. How do we motivate a teenager to clean up their room when they don't want to? But I mean, I feel like incremental change, that's the goal, incremental change, right? If my son comes up to me and says, hey, Mom, I want to go to the movies. And I'm like, well, how does your room look? And he's like, you know, I want to go to the movies. And I'm like, okay, well, is your room clean? He's like, yes. And I walk in, everything's pushed under, you know, the bed. You know, this is clean to him, you know. Now I can join that struggle, right? And we can make a big mess out of this situation, or I can help him succeed and in incremental moments, right? And that would look like, hey, why don't you get your shoes all in that bin, you know, put your dirty clothes in the hamper, and then you can go. But that's incremental change, incremental moments where he feels that succession and he can kind of move on. You know, I know he wants to go. I really want him to go. My goal isn't to, you know, keep him captive.
And I think that's an important point, because when I would tell my kids to clean their room, I would define what that means. Your bed needs to be clean. The clean clothes should be in the drawer or the closet, and your dirty clothes in the hamper. Like just those minimal. Anything else above that is like great, but that's minimal what I'm expecting. Yeah.
Oh, I think it's also remembering that they get really good at cleaning their room. It doesn't mean they know how to clean the bathroom, or they know how to clean the kitchen or the dining room or the garage or whatever. So it's not like, well, I taught you this. Well, no, you helped me with this one. Now I need help with this one and this one and this one.
One other thing I was thinking about was homework. Why would a child complete his or her homework, have it all nice and neat, and not turn it in? Do you think they really want to get in trouble? Do you think they really don't want to turn it in? That's the goal. They've completed it, but yet they didn't turn it in. So we're talking back to, again, executive functioning. So maybe they may need that extra little push or reminder in the morning. Did you get your homework? And do that for a while, and maybe they'll catch on.
Right. And that's not coddling or enabling. That's teaching them task follow through even. Yeah.
Absolutely. My daughter, it was her junior year. She was taking AP courses. And at the end of the year, you have to test in order to pass the course. And she's in cheer. So at the end of the year, we're also filled up with competitions that she, you know, misses, you know, a lot of school towards the end of the school year. Well, she had these 2 tests that were on conflicting dates. So she had to pick one. So that meant one course she was not going to receive credit. She could not test. You do not receive credit. And so it was, in my eyes, I saw this big, huge mistake. Like, why would you take this class all year long and, you know, not take it on the first assigned date? Because there's 2 opportunities. And she held it. She waited till the very end to kind of schedule it all. But, you know, in that moment, again, you know, it's, you know, she didn't do this on purpose. You know, the consequences in the moment, in the action. She's not going to get credit, you know. She worked all year long, made great grades all year long, and is not going to receive credit. So I think, you know, at different levels, at different age levels, there's things that our kids aren't wanting to fail, you know.
Yes.
And I think it's important as parents to really, really look at things in the long run, right? Like, yes, in high school, that was an inconvenient thing. But when she's 32 and married with 2 kids, is that really going to be something that you're like, I wasted so much time, effort, and energy on? And yes, it was inconvenient. Yes, it was unfortunate. But in the spectrum of things.
Right, and I'm glad it happened, you know, in high school rather than college, you know, like this is something that's happening now. This is happening so you can learn from this moment and move forward, not to stay stuck.
Absolutely. All right, next one. Is my child depressed, or are they just unmotivated? How would we know if a child is depressed or there's something else going on?
I can go with one situation where I did have a parent who was very concerned about the child being depressed, brought the child in to see me. We worked together one session, okay, talked about it. Next session, the child basically proved that she wasn't. The child was still doing all of the activities she loves doing, but the child was in her room more, on her phone more, playing video games with friends. And ultimately the problem was, or the issue was, the child just wasn't spending that time that they had been spending before the age of 15 with parents, all the hugging and stuff. And so that's where the breakdown was. The parents thought that she was depressed because of that, but she was not. She's still functioning. She's not slowed. She's doing everything except hugging you and spending all of that time. So that could be one way. to know.
Well, I think we have to remember too, the clinical depression and just being sad are very different, right? That if we are feeling sad or unmotivated, we should, one thing that I heard from a teenager one time is like, how do I know if I'm depressed or I'm just sad? I'm like, well, you should feel sad when sad things are happening, right? It's a normal human emotion, but depression is when you are having this sadness for no clear reason, or it's persisting past the sadness. So things like losing interest in things, feeling sad more often than not, poor sleep or too much sleep. What's another one? Appetite, either too much, eating too much or too little, the weight changes, maybe thoughts about death or dying, poor concentration, poor memory. Those are all clinical signs of depression. I think we have to pay attention to those things, but also knowing that there's phases that happen with kids in terms of phase of life issues, a divorce, a move, a PCS, a deployment of a parent, all these different things that happen as well too. So.
And I love the term, is it impeding their daily functioning?
Yes.
Because Dr. Lockhart, you named a few of those. Is it changing their eating patterns, sleeping patterns, hobbies, friends? Now, it's kind of hard to tell because in the teenage years, a lot of those things do change. Hobbies change, time spent with family changes, but do they have a replacement activity? Are they doing something instead of the things that they used to do? That's what we want to look for. Are they replacing things that they used to love with maybe new things they love, or are they just kind of dropping off altogether and not having any interest at all?
Yes.
All right, awesome. Okay, my child is anxious and I cannot understand where it comes from. Is it learned behavior?
So we know anxiety can be learned behavior. A lot of times I have parents who are extremely anxious, and a lot of times they will say things like, let me handle what's going on. I don't want you worrying, let mom worry. Well, guess what? You're modeling before them. So once again, modeling that behavior, then they follow. However, anxiety can also be anxiety for other causes. And so you just have to pretty much look into it and try to get to the root.
Well, there's consistent research that shows that kids who have anxious moms specifically will develop anxiety in some way because so much of it is learned, but it's also can be hereditary. There can be like this predisposition, just like you can be predisposed for high blood pressure or diabetes, those kinds of things. And so I think we have to remember, again, not to beat ourselves up over it, but to remember that. Like when I was a kid growing up on an island, my mom was very afraid of frogs, but she had plants everywhere and frogs love plants. And it was only one way into our house, and we had these huge frogs on the island, like really huge, and they would be like above the door, and we would come home and she's like, oh my gosh, we need to get in, and she's like freaking out, and I'm like, Mom, and so she gives me the keys as I'm running to open our deadbolt, and she's screaming. So then I develop a fear of frogs. Why did I? Because there's this association between her screaming and being terrified and this huge, humongous thing. Now I'm thinking, well, would I have become afraid of frogs had it not been for that response? Maybe not, And so because as we know with repeated exposure, you become desensitized and you're not. And so, but yes, a lot of it can be learned and a lot of it can also be hereditary. So I think we need to keep that in mind, that we don't want to help our kids avoid, because avoidance feeds the anxiety.
Well, and I think it goes back to what you were talking about earlier, is modeling. So you are anxious about something, and then verbally talking through, like, oh, I'm really worried, kid appropriate or age appropriate, of course, but I'm worried about XYZ at work, or I'm anxious or whatever, and then talk through what you're going to do to fix it or change it or help your anxiety. Because like you said, people or kids think, oh, we have it all together, we know everything because we make all the decisions and the choices. So if then they see, oh, okay, she was anxious about this is what she did, maybe I can do it in my situation. Or they'll be more willing to talk to you about it because they know you have had anxiety or worries as well.
All right, I think my child has anxiety. What can I do to help them try new things?
I say just give them the opportunities, right? Like sometimes we find ourselves wanting to protect our kids from the anxiety, and so we help them avoid those activities, right? But kind of like we talked about this, do it afraid. Do it imperfectly, right? Do the thing that makes you uncomfortable so that instead of maybe feeling it at a 10, now you feel it at an 8. And then the next time you feel it at a 6. And then eventually maybe it'll just be a mild butterfly in your tummy rather than the big response, right? But by avoiding it, we never learn that it's not as scary as we thought.
And I think you can I can't take credit for it. It's a book I read, but they talk about stepping it up. So like finding all right, so this is the top goal. I want to get here. I want to be in the school play. Okay, so what can I do? I can go to the play and I can see what it takes. Then I can volunteer to clean up, and then so step it up. So then it's not jumping. And sometimes it is. I do agree. Sometimes you need to jump in and try something new, but sometimes it is building that up so then it's a 10, an 8, a 6. So then when they're there, then they're like, oh, it's not as bad as I thought it was.
Well, and I think like slow exposure is like what you guys are describing. It's slow exposure, but I also feel like, emotional regulation is, the ability to kind of regulate, right? And so sometimes when, we can get stuck. We can be helping our kid get stuck by kind of like, well, what if, and this and that, and, and sometimes by kind of pushing them in those environments, we're helping them get unstuck.
Yeah.
And so they're stuck. We want to kind of help them move along.
One of my favorite strategies because we tend to make things worse in our head than they actually are, and sometimes they are just as bad as we thought, but is the what if, now what? And so like the worst case scenario, and then, but also balance it out with the best case scenario and the most ideal scenario. So, okay, well, what if you are in the school play and you fall on the stage? Like, what if, because that's what you're saying in your head anyway. So what if, now what? I can play it off and get up, right? Well, what if you stumbled over your words as you're talking? I just start over and keep going, right? So it's like, because I think people forget that it's okay to rehearse. That's why we rehearse before games, why we rehearse before a performance, so that you can be good enough and perfected as much as you can. And it's the same thing with the things that we have in our head too. It's like, yeah, let's rehearse it in our head, and but don't just rehearse the bad, let's rehearse the good too. So, okay, next one. What are practical ways to help my child manage their stress? And we kind of talked a little bit about this, but any other ones that may have popped up in your heads?
I think helping your child learn what's stressful, right? Sometimes what's stressful to them, we may not even think about it being a stressor. And they're like, yeah, this is actually really difficult. Or vice versa, something that we may perceive as stressful, they're like, oh, I'm not worried about that at all. So I think just getting children and teenagers to learn like what is stressful for them and vocalizing that.
So triggers, what triggers you, recognizing how you're feeling even before that moment, because sometimes other things are going on and you don't know why you're reacting the way that you are. But I think definitely recognizing what triggers you, and then also teaching them strategies, the deep diaphragmatic breathing and all of those things, and being able to kind of push through in that manner. So.
Well, and teaching them that stress is not all bad. Like there's good stress. Right? Right. There's optimal level of stress that helps you to perform. Like Angie, you work with athletes, and just that optimal level of stress, you don't want to just be chilling on the football field, right? You want to have that optimal level of like the adrenaline that gets you going, and that even before the play or the performance or the test, you want to have that optimal level of stress that gets you going. You just don't want to send it over to the edge. So I think that's an important piece too.
I had a kiddo, a 4-year-old, mention, she's like, I'm so stressed at school in the cafeteria. And her parents looked at her like, what do you have to be stressed about it? But as she began to speak, she clearly was stating what made her stressful: the loud noises, the people talking, the kids asking her questions, not being able to enjoy her meal. She sounded, I was so proud of her, and they were like, they didn't realize that. Parents didn't realize that was stressful to her. And so her giving that label of what stress felt like to her was important.
That's why it's important for us as parents to be curious, because then we don't really know what's going on.
Yeah. And I think kind of to your point is validating it, right? Like, don't minimize. I'm stressed because I have all these responsibilities at work, but that's her job, right? Her job is to go to school. Her job is, for half of the day to do this. And for her, those are a 10. Those are her big realities. And so just because it comes in a different package doesn't make it feel any different than your stress as an adult.
Well, and validating that at 4 then helps build the connection that you're hoping to have when I'm 16.
A bigger issue.
Yeah, because if you're not going to trust me when I tell you about I don't like the loud cafeteria, then are you going to trust me when, this kid broke my heart, or I'm fighting, or I'm failing?
And school cafeterias are definitely
they are loud.
It is. They're very loud, and they can be intimidating, especially if you don't have someone to sit with. the smells. I mean, all kinds of
The
stuff.
rules.
Yeah.
So many rules.
Yeah. All right. How can I help my child build their frustration tolerance? So we can start by even like defining it, because sometimes that might be a new term for people, but let's define what frustration tolerance is, and then how can we help a child build that? So well, frustration tolerance, I mean, it's your ability to tolerate frustration. To be able to handle things when things don't go your way. When you've hit traffic and you expected to get there earlier. When you hoped that they would serve something in the cafeteria and they didn't. When you wanted to get together with your friends and they canceled on you. Like, how to handle that mental and physical, emotional, psychological frustration. And then what do you do with it? And that's a big one for kids. And it's really, I think it's sometimes unrealistic for parents to expect that kids just know how to do it, because it's a new emotion. So how can we help a child or a teen build frustration tolerance?
I think by working on like flexibility and adaptability, those things will definitely help with frustration tolerance. So I tell parents sometimes to start small and do it on purpose, right? Tell your child, we are going to Walmart today. You're on the road, you're heading to Walmart, and you go, oh, actually, we need to go to Target instead. That's a small example, but that's a way of working with a child's flexibility, adaptability. They're expecting one thing, and you provide a little something else. It's building that, mechanism in their brain that maybe doesn't have much practice with that.
I love using games for frustration tolerance because most people, kids, adults, we all want to win, whatever we're playing. And so by bringing in games that either they feel like, oh, I can win that easily, or things that they don't think they can win and you can model throughout, like, oh, you really wanted to move your piece 6 spaces forward, and now you have to go back 6. Or, whatever happens in the game, but it can help teach the flexibility, like, oh, you got the piece I wanted, you got the move I wanted, but it's in a safe area because it's a game. You're playing at your house or you're playing with friends, and so then it helps build that social aspect of it, being able to see how other people win or lose, and then being able to model it yourself and how you react.
I agree. Modeling is really important when we're teaching cognitive flexibility. Being able to see someone else's perspective and kind of showing our kids how we can do that. Like how sometimes people truly do see what they see, and we can respect that. But cognitive flexibility is so important. I play this game with kids where I'll hold a ball and I'll ask them, what do you see? And they'll see, I see a ball. And I'm like, well, I see a magic ball. It's a magic crystal, and can you see what I'm seeing? And at first they're like, no, it's a ball, Miss Kim, it bounces. And I'll let them know, I'm like, you're right, it is a ball. I see what you're saying. And but that's what we call cognitive rigidity. I said, right now our brain is like, it's like a board, and it's not allowing information to come in. And do we want information to come in? Do we want to learn? Do we want to grow? Yes, okay, then we want to practice it, our cognition, to become flexible, just like we stretch our muscles. And we can do that by looking at other people's perspective. What is it that you see, and kind of accepting that. But yes, cognitive flexibility is best taught when we model it ourselves.
And the cognitive flexibility really helps with frustration tolerance, because things don't always work out like I expect or the way that I want, and that's okay too. And it's a hard skill.
I think the other two things is, number one, naming it. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling distress tolerance is another way that I talk about it with kids, right? And then when they're feeling it, say, okay, let's sit in that for a minute, right? Let's feel the feeling, because innately our goal or our desire is to avoid it, right? I want to run away from this feeling. And when we're able to teach the kids, I can sit in this discomfort and the world doesn't fall apart. I'm going to feel very uncomfortable for 90 seconds, and then it's not going to be as bad. And then the next time I can look at it and be like, remember that time that I felt that thing that was so uncomfortable, but it went away. It doesn't last.
And I think people have gotten this whole idea of gentle parenting and authoritative parenting and conscious discipline. I think they're getting it wrong. They think that a kid messes up and they say something, they cuss you out, and you're like, oh, you have strong feelings. Mommy loves you. Now, okay, that is not what that kind of parenting is. That it is not a normal response to to be happy if your child just called you a name. That is not normal. And so I always try to encourage parents that if you are feeling a kind of way about what your kid just did, they just busted you in the back of the head, they called you a name, they insulted you, said you're the worst mom ever. It's normal to feel angry, hurt, disappointed, all those things, and to show it. Yeah, and say, wow, that really made me feel a bunch of different feelings, and to really be able to express that and showing them that it's okay to feel those feelings and it's okay to then recover and heal and repair too.
Yes, I have a lot of parents who beat themselves up. They didn't respond exactly the way they wanted because it didn't feel good, and it's natural. You're right. It doesn't feel good to yell at our kids, but it was a natural response. It was a response to what they did. You got hit in the back of your head. If they were out in the real world, what would happen? And your home is that place where you're teaching your child. And so a lot of times parents go back and they apologize, and I completely get that, but at the same time, it was a natural response. You're human. And so I think sometimes that's confusing for a kid too, because it's here they did something very awful and then a parent's apologizing, for their behavior. So I think that's very confusing for a kid.
Okay. Last one in this category. How can I help my child and their lack of confidence?
One of the things and this is just an opinion, not a fact, is celebrate the small successes, right? Every time they have a win, over exaggerate, celebrate it, and be like, oh my gosh, I am so proud of you. You picked up your shoes off the floor. Oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. You studied for the test, right? Because maybe the result isn't what we wanted, but the effort was. And so making sure that we differentiate between the effort and the outcome.
I think it's building in times that they can achieve things. So if they're little, like, oh, you carry this toilet paper roll to the house, as we're unloading groceries, or you empty the dishwasher, like giving them little things. In our eyes, it might seem little, but big to them. And so start helping them find ways, oh, I can put this in, put a book on the shelf. I can pick up a ball. And then, like you're saying, acknowledge that, like, oh, thanks, you helped clean up. And then sometimes like, oh, you tried something new, even if it doesn't work, to help, like, oh, I am capable. I am able to do more than I think.
And to spin off of Deanna, it's also being a part of something, right? They're a part of your household. Yeah. They feel like they belong, and that's part of building your self-esteem. And when you feel like you belong, that's important. And so when you have these little jobs for them and they're successful at them, it feels good.
And even if they're not successful, to let them do it. Like if you have to fix it, fix it to what you think needs to be done, or maybe it does need to be fixed, do it after they're in bed or whatever, because then their confidence is, oh, I tried, but mom's going to do it anyway, so why even try? So I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier, letting go of our view of what it should be, and letting them have the 2-year-old effort, the 4-year-old effort, the 6-year-old effort.
My son, he's 12 and he really loves baking and cooking, and last weekend he wanted to make homemade pizza, and that's a chore. But he had learned over time to always have a backup. And so he started making one, and he put the sauce while the dough was on the counter, and it turned into a goop, like a ball of goop. So he got really upset. There's a lot of that frustration. And I said, okay, well, but you have a backup. So let's put it on the parchment paper instead. So that way you have it, and put some flour so that you have it soaks up. So anyway, we went through that, and I was like, wow. And it turned out really good. It tasted so good. And I said, look at that. Look at you persisted, and look what happened. And he's like, yeah, I'm a good pizza maker. I was like, yeah, you are. And so, I mean, even those, like you said, those little successes make such a difference. And I love telling kids, not just that I'm proud of them, but you should be proud of you, because I don't want kids to also feel that all of their validation comes from external sources. It can also come from inside of them as well too. So I think being able to just say that, and then he'll be like, I am proud of me, And so so that internal message gets repeated, and I think that's so important.